there's been this recurring topic that has been really hot lately, and I was like, we got to get Mr. Geoff Sokol here on the line and start talking about it. And it's framed in the lens of financial planning, but we can also talk about the broader topic of the real cost of inaction.
Mm.
What is it really costing us to do nothing? So the easy low-hanging fruit is, yeah, we should all save more, we should plan better. But you made a good comment the other day that I want to touch upon, which is, well, business owners plan all the time.
Of course.
It's just when it comes to their personal financial plans, maybe it takes it's second tier. So why do you think that is?
There's a lot of research on this behavioral finance topic. We're stuck to the ways we do things because maybe our parents did it a certain way or something happened along the way that forced us to make these certain decisions. Like the classic one is the guy who he made all his or her money. They came from the trenches or whatever it is, and they'll always fly coach. It's like you can afford to
Yeah.
fly business class. It's a long flight. You don't want to have your back tightening up, and they're like,
Warren
no.
Warren Buffett in his old pickup truck.
Right. It's like he's living in the same house, he's driving the same car for 50 years. People, they do what they do. But what's funny, like you drew that comparison with the business, everything is meticulously organized and structured. They have departments with specific KPIs. They know which levers to pull. They know which marketing campaigns are working the best. They know if they want to increase their marketing spend, how to guide those new leads through the funnel, what the sales process is, so on and so forth. Then you talk to them about their finances, they're like, yeah, I don't know. I got this real estate, I got a kid on the way. I don't know. I got other things to focus on. It's like, what's the disconnect?
Yeah.
Because the capability is there. They'll do it with the business, but not necessarily with the finances. So to frame it as the cost of inactivity, that's a good one. That suddenly they're like, okay, I don't want to be losing $1 million for no reason. And then we can dive in.
And maybe the cost of doing nothing is a bit harsh because we know they're doing a lot. And you just framed all the many things that business owners are doing. Do you think it's because the nature of business is constantly, it's a very proactive thing. It's like I have kids and they say, Dad, I'm hungry. It's proactive, where I
Hmm.
might not eat all day because I just wasn't thinking about it. Where the business, it's very demanding. How do we start getting our personal finances to be as demanding and look as demanding to us as maybe our businesses are?
A great question. I mean, that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about here is trying to make these topics more relatable. That's part of it. More palatable, more digestible.
Hmm.
Just that part of it is there's a hesitance or a reluctance because you have that sort of instinctual reaction. We bring you this idea, this is what you should do, and here's the following, and they're like, I don't know. There's a lot to think about. Whereas the business, it's not always this way, but often there's a real passion. There's real like
Yeah.
a zest. There's real drive. Like you wake up excited to do something. You
Hmm.
have colleagues that you like. It's an inspirational environment. You're thrilled, and then you have to put in that 10 or 15 hours of work where it's constantly reinforced. So you must
Right.
think about these things. You have to make a decision. Whereas when the financial topics come up and you're like, it's February. I got to think about my taxes March or April. I don't know. I have an accountant for that. I don't want to
Yeah.
think about
Right.
that
Yeah.
because if I do think about that, now I have an opportunity cost. Like, am I going to be bogged down in this stressful topic when I should be thinking about this other thing? So it's kind of like you're juggling a lot of different things. If you want to think about your 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 highest return on investment of time and effort, maybe that's your business, and therefore you don't think about the other topics. So, there's only so many hours in the day.
It begs the topic of control. So with
Hmm.
business, maybe we all have this false sense of control, the illusion of control, kind of going back to behavioral finance. But
Hmm.
for as a business owner, I know if I spend more money on ads, I'm going to get more clicks. If I get more clicks, I get more leads. If I get more leads, I can close more business. What is something that we could gamify in our own personal finance in that regard?
It's a good question. I like to think of it, I can tie this back to the lead in topic. So I have a kid on the way, God willing,
Mhm.
everything goes well there. So I have a 529 plan is at the front and center of my mind. A 529 plan is education savings.
Mhm.
This topic comes up from time to time with business owners. Just last week, I was talking to someone who said, I'd love to retire, but I checked the cost of tuition. So it looks like I'm going to be working a lot longer. And, it's a little tongue in cheek,
Sure.
but they're thinking about how they're going to need $1 million when it comes to sending 3 or 4 kids to school. If they get a master's and a PhD, then and God help them. But they think they'll need that $1 million in a lump sum. So they're working hard so that there's $1 million available at any given moment.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm thinking, I can open up a 529 account right now. When my son is born and has a social security number, he can become the beneficiary. So this is gamified for me because I can see it grow in real time. So this is a bit of math. $500 per month for 18 years will be worth $300,000. Probably he's going to get him through a 4-year, maybe a UC school. I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk with the wife. Or maybe he wants to be an electrician. We'll see. Um, but I know that I'll have that $300,000 there if I get a 10% return, which is historically average for the S&P 500, versus this other guy thinks he'll put that same $500 per month in. It'll be worth $300,000, but he could be in a 40% tax bracket. So he's going to realize that 300,000, he's going to pay $120,000 on it. We've done the same exact thing if we both put that $500 per month in, but he's paying $120,000 in tax. I got $300,000 tax free. So when I think about gamification, I'm imagining I know how much money is going into each thing. Everything is neatly organized. I can watch the account balances grow over time, and I can see whether or not I'm on track to reach my goals while I'm also getting those tax benefits.
Yeah.
So this is like the best of all the different worlds where, it just takes that advanced planning, a little bit of know-how, and you can make anything happen.
Yeah. There's so much I want to build off on that. So let me just start with the first one, which is the numbers. So
Mm-hmm.
you can gamify them. So our business owners know the numbers of their business, but they may not know the numbers of their portfolio.
Sure.
So maybe as a starter, call Mr. Geoff Sokol here and get tight and close to your numbers. But that would be a starter, is knowing the numbers at an intimate level to where you know how your portfolio is performing, what you have, and not just make it the onus of your financial advisor. Because that's very common, right? It's like, oh, my financial advisor takes care of it. We look at it once a year. So you could probably gamify that a bit further. The other one is knowing these, they're not hacks, they're solutions, the 529. And we could probably sit here and list another 20 of these strategies, right? Where you can say, well, did you know this and did you know that? So as much as you should know the numbers, you probably may be missing some of the strategies. And once you put those two things together, then kind of going back to one of your earlier comments about, well, business owners are passionate. Well, I think business owners are passionate because they have these levers, and all day long you're pulling these levers. So if you have some strategies, you have some good habits, you know the numbers, and then you can become very passionate once you see all the numbers trending upward, and then you can have something to track and follow. That's, I think, a way to gamify it.
Yes, absolutely. They have that level of expertise with the business. We can fill in some of the blanks for them on the other side of it with these different types of investment accounts. And then here's the catch, or here's the good news. Running a business is way more difficult than financial planning. Maybe I shouldn't say that because I'll run myself out of a job, but the level of skill to be an effective operator is way more difficult. So I think the reason this is good news, whereas you might need to do 8 or 10 hours per day on the business or more, your finances, we probably can just carve out an hour or two here or there throughout the month, maybe a little bit more front loaded when a relationship begins to get on the right page or on the same page. But then from there, it's pretty much a well-oiled machine. We check in every couple of months. If anything has changed, we update accordingly. But it's about just kind of like building that train, building those tracks, and then just send it.
Yeah.
And as long as it keeps on chugging, you're good to go.
I think there's another way to, again, I don't want to use the word hack, but move into action at an emotional level, because emotion always needs to be part of the equation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you were talking about your child to be, you're saying, well, hey, I have this child that's coming, and you're emotionally tied. It's your child, of course. You're emotionally tied to their future. So as a business owner, in many cases, I don't do things for myself. I could tell you that firsthand. I do things for my family. I do things for the employees, for the better of the company, and for my clients, for all this other stuff. I used to think about myself last. So maybe we can tie our financial goals to other people in our lives that we care about, or other causes or other things. And that could also be another way to tie us emotionally to the end game.
Yes, that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about the numbers and that level of gamification. If you get to 5 or if you get to 10, it's exciting. But where we actually start before then, when we're really going to begin an engagement, we're going to start with your goals. We can add the numbers to the goals. Like, I want to send my children to higher education. Like, that's the goal. Then we introduce the 529. We can talk about insurance or other asset protection schemes. But it starts with a goal that emotionally resonates.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, we want to know, what are your goals? It could be, in 3 years, I want to buy a new house. In 10 years, I want to send my children to higher education. In 15 years or 20 years, I want to retire. It's like, we have these three things that are very important to you. Then we can attach the numbers to it. So the numbers, if the gamification works, great. But if the goal is what anchors you to keep doing it, then perfect. So
That's
we
a good
use
point.
goals, vision, and values. And then this often happens where we ask somebody what really matters the most to you in your life. It's gonna often be about family or certain like philanthropic causes.
Hmm.
Then we can introduce other things. That's where other strategies come into it, where not only can you donate to, like, there's a donor advised fund is a popular way of doing it, or other legacy causes, but there's tax benefits that come with it. So now we're talking about optimizing your finances and being as efficient as you possibly can be while doing something that's incredibly meaningful to you, while getting the tax benefits, while anchoring all of these activities to certain goals. It just really,
It's like a
it
trifecta.
clicks.
Yeah,
That's it.
it's the trifecta. So I like the goal, vision, and values. We talked about the goal. I think the vision is, where you want to be at a certain point. But how do you tell us more about values?
It's important to do this because I this happens to me all the time where, I'm looking at a spreadsheet, like I'm doing financial projections and analysis to figure out where are we going to be in a hypothetical, like a bear case, a neutral case, and my bullish case. And it's like, it's almost too numerical, whereas then I got to go and talk to my wife and kids, and they don't care about any of this.
Right.
So it's like, what ultimately matters more, getting 11% or a 13% or getting this tax break versus, like, I want to be at my daughter's piano recital. So it's,
Right.
sometimes you just have to put that front and center. So we have a dashboard, which on one side will be the, like, here's your portfolio allocation, here's, your income and expense, here's what your balance sheet looks like. And then on the other side, we're going to put vision and values. So anytime we're looking at this dashboard, before we think, oh, you know what, I got to speculate, I got to buy this Tesla stock down here, it's like, well, hold on a minute. Like, let's keep this anchored to what we're trying to accomplish. And if you buy that high risk investment and it goes up by double, what does that mean? Does it correlate at all with what you're trying to achieve in your personal life? And if not, then no need to take the risk. But what I'm saying is, don't separate the two. Like, keep them both front and center so that your financial plan numerically is tied to your vision and values, like emotionally, so
That's a
that there's
great
a
point.
connection.
That's a great point. I think the nerve that we're touching on here is the emotionality of the whole thing, and having it somewhere where you can see it almost like a vision board, because the other title for this was Financial Chaos Breeds Inaction. So maybe we could turn the page and talk a little bit about what financial chaos looks like, feels like, because I think most people don't move in their financial life because they have anxiety around it. When we talk about anxiety with all of this, really, when we talk about anxiety with all of it, there's fear, anxiety, economic uncertainty. There's, what happens if, there's all that. Largely, people don't even want to talk to their financial advisor. They don't want to look at their bank account. They don't want to look at their statements. They don't want to even know, because if they don't look, then they don't have to deal with it. So how do we help people get past that?
The first thing is that what you just identified, that's the case for everybody. So just talking about it openly. Like, there will be moments where these things happen, where there's temptations or there's emotion, and you'll be tempted to do something that maybe is a good idea, maybe it's not. But let's talk about it. So it's like, that's the
That's
first
a
step,
good
is
point.
just,
Yeah.
as these things come up, that's what I'm here for. Send me a text, send me an email, give me a call, that's what I do. It's like, you wouldn't keep that information from a doctor. If your knee was hurting and then you went and you saw the doctor, you wouldn't, like, be shy to
No,
talk
that's
about it.
such a great point. I've had a lifting coach lately, and yesterday I had this issue when I was lifting and kind of hurt my arm, and I was like, I don't want to tell him because I'm supposed to be doing this perfect form, and I just knew it wasn't. I was like, you know what? No, he's my coach for a reason. Let me just talk it out. And I talked it out, and he's like, yeah, that's actually very common. It's one of the most common ways you're going to hurt yourself. And it just really made me feel comfortable. And I was like, okay, cool. I am on the right track. I just have to make these little tweaks and adjustments. So I think getting it out there in the open, what else can we do?
Yeah, so on the same theme that it's very common. Um, for some people, success is new. And it's kind of like they say like fake it till you make it or like whatever it is. Or imposter syndrome maybe, where you're trying so hard to fit in, like you're at the Silicon Valley, you're at the table now, and people are pitching you new ideas, and you're like, whoa, just a few years ago, I was like eating top ramen, or like all of this stuff is so new that you're trying so hard to fit in that you don't want to acknowledge the fact that you're in a little bit over your head. It's completely normal. It's like suddenly now you own real estate, you have more income coming in that you know what to do with, you have investment accounts, you have a wife and kids. There's a lot going on. Not to mention like your tax strategy or which sort of asset protection schemes or trusts or insurance products you might need. It's a lot. And if you don't have a classical background or you haven't done the hundreds of hours of research to know about these things, then why would you? It's
Right.
like I haven't studied ancient history. So if I'm on like Jeopardy one day, I wouldn't just suddenly expect to suddenly know all the answers. Like
You know,
that's not my expertise.
you bring up a good point about the wealth side. Most people aren't prepared to deal with a massive influx of cash. When you're getting started with business, it's very lean and mean, bootstrapped. I mean, everyone always says, the college kids eating pizza and top ramen. You made that mention, right? We're all kind of, as we're young, we're just built to do with what we have. But I've seen plenty of scenarios where we've had business owners have these windfalls. They won a new client. That led to another client, and then the competitor wanted to sell them. Before you knew it, in a very short period of time, they became uber millionaires or multi millionaires. And I'm not talking about like true luck. I mean, they spent their time, their years, but it did happen rapidly. It started compounding in a way that all of a sudden, and I'm sure you've had these types of phone calls where next thing you know, someone's saying like, "Hey, I think I'm going to have this massive tax bill, and it's April 10th. I need your help." Right. And
Hmm.
so that's the other side of this table. It's like, I feel like most average business owners are, they kind of work through the lean years and they do what they do to get to a certain point. But when it starts to snowball, not everyone's set up. They don't know necessarily what to do with wealth once it's being created.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I like working with people early on in the process for this exact reason. There's another behavioral thing, like they say to visualize your success.
Hmm.
Like people will say it's hard to believe. I think there's like an element of humility. Like I can't believe my first client paid and now like they're looking back 10 years ago and now I have this great product. But part of it, like I say this to entrepreneurs all the time, obviously they believe in what they're doing. Like that's why all the work is being done.
Yes.
Every entrepreneur has this in common. They've encountered like a product or service or whatever it is. They're just like, this is awful. I could do this way better. So you're surprised several years later by your success. I call BS. Like you knew this was gonna work. You shouldn't be surprised that now you're making a ton of money. So it's like, okay, better late than never. Like if it's April 10th, hey, we still got some time before the tax deadline. Not a ton of time, but the money's coming in. Like, okay, if we put it off this long, first of all, you earned it. You introduced something like this. I mean, this at the end, just a quick aside on private enterprise. Like we're having positive outcomes that scale for the
Yes.
net benefit of society.
Hmm.
Like you earned the money. Now, what are we gonna do with it? Like let's take a step back, and then this is what I'm talking about, like planning by category. So now, what are our goals? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to solve for? Do you want a new house? Do you want a successful retirement? Like now we're gonna to bring in or introduce the numerical side of it. But this idea that like it comes and it's overwhelming, and I am being a little,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I'm having some fun with it, but it's like, you knew this was gonna happen. This is a great product. So better late than never, I think, is a good theme. But also for any entrepreneurs that may be listening to this who could be like very early stage and they're say like 3 or 5 years from this level of success, if you're visualizing and imagining yourself as being very successful, it's good to start thinking about this stuff now so that you're more prepared when it does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's turn the page and talk about the later stage entrepreneur, the later stage business owner that is probably about 5 years out before they know they're going to retire. And they would love to sell their business if they thought one of their kids wanted it, or if they thought there was someone out there that could buy it. Maybe they've been presented offers and they just don't know what to do with it. But one thing is certain, they're going to get out in the next couple of years because they've hit the end of their rainbow. A lot of times they're not ready. They're not ready to do so. And then they start having those retirement conversations at that stage, maybe 55, 60, somewhere in that ballpark is what we typically see. What would you say to that group of people today?
We do a lot of exit planning assignments. When we first use the phrase exit planning, what that owner or operator thinks is, well, I don't know if I want to sell the business. So we have to define what we're talking about. Exit planning is is literally what it sounds like. It's the plan. So we can look at 5 or 10 different scenarios, either the outright sale, or there's like a roll up strategy where maybe you stick around and then you get bought out at the end, or you can identify a succession plan, whether that's internally or you hire somebody externally, or it's a child or someone in the family. And then it doesn't have to be like in the next 12 or 18 months we're going to sell. That could be one thing we look at, and then we can decide, do we want to do that? Yes or no. We can look at doing it in 5 years. We can look at doing it in 10 years. Or we can say what's called annuitization, where you maintain ownership of the business, at least in some capacity, so you can still get a salary and some benefits from it, but you don't have to sell it. The point about doing the planning and the scenario modeling is that when you do ultimately make a choice, it's not emotional and it's not chaotic.
Mm.
Like we've analyzed 10 or 20 or however many different paths you can take, and now I am choosing I like this one the most. So there's a level of comfort there in knowing I looked at all the choices, I looked at all the alternatives, and my family and I decided together that we want to take this path, at least for now. And then, as we always do, we can reassess. So
That's
it's
a
like,
great,
it's just that empowerment.
yeah, that's a good point. So being well prepared is never bad, right? Having a plan, like when is having a plan ever bad, right? Right? Just knowing, having some sense, because what we see, I work a lot on the exit planning side. A lot of times what we see is our clients that are acquiring aggressively, they have a lot of leverage. They have money, they have talent, they have time, they have all these things. They could just come in and they can throw their weight around. And if you're not prepared, and if you're scrambling to get out, or if you absolutely need to get out for whatever reason, you're going to end up getting out at a discount. And it's not going to be in your benefit, and most likely it's not going to be on your terms. You can get out, but you're going to be getting out to someone who has all the leverage. Versus if you're well prepared, you knew what you had, you had your tight documentation, you had an exit strategy, everything was dialed, you knew your numbers, you knew how much time you wanted to stay in the business. You now have leverage in the deal. How does that same scenario apply to the personal financial planning?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it goes back to the opening concept of the cost of inactivity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you wait for that maximum moment of tension to then decide what to do. You might get lucky, but chances are you're probably getting 75 cents on the dollar or worse by not taking that proactive approach and then doing it when you don't have any leverage. So I think the business exit is a great example. Same way, like I see this with equity compensated employees. They think that the equity compensation, like the stock options that they have, um, they're just going to keep going up. It's like I trust my CEO. He says we're going to $500 per share, so I'm going to hold on. And it's like, first of all, it might not happen. Second of all, it could, and then you exercise all at once when you get to that magic number, and you'll have less net proceeds than if you had exercised along the way because of your tax bracket. So like the general theme is you're subjecting yourself to more risk and more uncertainty by doing nothing. Whether you're owner of a business, whether you have equity compensation, whether you have a big stock portfolio, whether you're thinking about selling your house in California and moving to Idaho, it's like any of these things where there's a transactional event or liquidity that comes suddenly, you owe it to yourself to do this scenario modeling and make sure that you're doing something that aligns with your vision and your goals and what you want to accomplish. Because if not, chances are you'll get a worse outcome than if you had done the planning. So that,
Right.
that theme just applies across the board.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. Okay, so as we round this thing out, I was curious to hear if there's any tools that you're using that are you found to be very helpful, like AI, apps. Is there anything out there that you would recommend to, let's say, let's pick the profile of business owner who's running, their small business. They have their team, and they're like, I got to do something more than I'm currently doing. Like, what would you recommend?
Well, AI is a great tool. Any of these AIs, like I use Claude, I use ChatGPT, I'm on Gemini, I'm on all of them. I
Hmm.
have different use cases for each one of them. They are helpful throughout the day. Like there's almost like a therapeutic element where you can just be like, this situation just happened to me. Like, what are like 5 or 10 different ways of looking at this?
Right.
I find that very helpful. Like our colleague Anna Vitali, she's done this one about how it's lonely at the top.
Hmm.
Like if you are a business owner, there's not that many people who are going to relate to what you're going through, which is frustrating. So yeah, just like that emotional component to talk it out. I like AI for that use case. Then the different AIs, like there's a couple of different things. Like you want to think about your liquidity and your cash flow. You want to think about your balance sheet. You want to think about your upside, and then you want to think about your risk to the downside. And that can be like what strategies are there to protect downside, like with tools versus like with legal support, and then also with like insurance products or other things that can help. So I would say AI is another good one with that. These are all free. So, we live in this digital age where let's say you hear what we say, you think it sounds interesting, you don't want to hire an advisor, but you want to explore this stuff. Yeah, just get on AI, type in some of your specifications. You can still use a Google search. It's not very popular to go on Google these days, but these financial planning softwares and these tax strategies, it's all out there. So I would encourage anyone to spend some time and learn what options they do have if they're thinking about it but don't want to take the plunge with a full advisory relationship.
Yeah, sure. I would go the other way and recommend someone picks up the phone or sends you an email because
Of course.
you're easy to talk to and you know a whole lot about the subject. So if you're out there, if this conversation is at all interesting to you, you're going to exit or you need some help with your financial plan, we'll put Jeff's contact information down below. Please like, comment, and follow along. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Tim.